Excellent. Okay, let's get
Thank you,
started.
Nikata.
Yeah,
Got the
let's get
thumbs
started.
up.
My name is
Beautiful.
Ben Tchoubineh. I am the president of Phoenix TS. We provide professional training to government employees as well as corporations. We've been doing that since 1998. So professional IT, cybersecurity, technology training, and so we're coming on 27 years old so far. Um, and with me, I have Ned Snow, who's managing this thing. Thank you, Ned, for that. Ned is our director of marketing and strategy. And, he's going to be kind of turning things on and off and making things work. So he's going to be doing his magic. So thank you, Ned. But most importantly, we have with us Neta Moye. Neta is an amazing individual. She's a clinical professor of management at the University of Maryland's prestigious Smith School of Business and a fellow of their executive education program. She's designed and executed high impact leadership development programs for audiences from C-suite executives to high school students and across a wide range of settings, including Fortune 500 companies, the federal government, NGOs, and highly ranked business schools. Nita combines her training as a rigorous researcher with her practical first-hand experience, helping individuals grow to build innovative programs that help leaders leverage the power of day-to-day experiences for their own personal development. Nita, we're so happy to have you. This is amazing. We started our partnership with the University of Maryland Smith School of Business last year, and this webinar is part of that partnership. So we're really excited to have you. Um, Tell us about this presentation. Frame the session for us.
Sure. I'm excited to be here. Welcome, everybody. This is what I love to do. If you look me up on LinkedIn, here's the cool thing about having an unusual name. I am the only Neta Moye in LinkedIn. So if you type that in, I'll pop up. And it says right there at the top, my tagline, passionate supporter of those who wish to realize their potential. So I love being here. I love that you're here as well. This session is we have a program that has multiple sessions in it called Bridge to Leadership. This is one of the 9 sessions in that overall program. And what I'm bringing today, what we're going to talk about today, is the first hour of the 4 hours of that session. So this is very concentrated. There was a lot we could have chose from, and we chose to concentrate on 2 topic areas. And the goal, if I had to say, what's in it for you, we're hoping this hour of this longer session will help you answer the following question in today's information-rich context. How can we better equip ourselves or our team to make better, faster, data-driven decisions? Better, faster, data-driven decisions. Technology is moving at such a pace. The great thing is we have more data. We love data-driven decision-making in the Smith School. But does it create some challenges when it comes to decision-making, especially if you pair the tons of data with a need for speed? So that's where we're headed. You want me to keep going, Ben? We're good? Let me show you. Let me show you when we were putting this together, we're thinking which part to show you, and we're like, we really think there's a fundamental part that we need to discuss. So 2 topics but share a theme. The theme is this image. We think this kind of captures the key message of the entire hour. And this is the old fable, right? The tortoise and the hare. And the moral from that is slow and steady wins the race. Be the tortoise, right? But is that necessarily true when it comes to decision making, especially in the context we're in today? In fact, let's do a poll just for fun. Let's get your fingers going and get you engaging. Ned, would you like to pull the poll up? Just see what you think. I'm just curious what you think. The question in the poll is, when it comes to decision making, which is more effective? Slow and steady wins the race, the tortoise, or that right out of the shot hare running as fast as you can? Or is it really a deliberate mix of both? Just weigh in. Let's see what you think. You can see the poll in one of 2 places. It's either in the middle of your screen or it's on the right. I see people weighing in. Look, everybody's saying deliberate mix of both. I almost didn't put that answer on there. just to force you to choose one or the other. Deliberate mix of both. One of the things I want to point out about the way we framed that third option, though, is the word deliberate. That's where we're headed today. What would it look like for you to have a deliberate mix of the tortoise and the hare? How much of it is tortoise? How much of it is hare? How do you get the tortoise in there in the midst of the hare? So that's where we're going. Again, in the data-rich context we're in now, how can we help people do that just right so they make better decisions, better, faster decisions? The
So
other
like
thing I wanted to,
I'm thinking because for me, I've always been told that I'm a very slow decision maker. In fact, I was the
yeah,
one vote for the tortoise. And I was like, because that's me. I pride myself in making slow decisions, because I want to be deliberate, right? So
right.
to me, deliberate means slow. The problem is like a lot of times I have to make very quick decisions. I mean, being a leader and so forth, people are asking me for decisions immediately, which
Yeah.
tends to fluster me. I'm like, some people do really well with fast decision making. I tend to make mistakes a lot. But I'll only figure that out after the fact. Hopefully, this can help me a
Mm.
little bit, but I'm just saying I'm sharing my pain as a slow decision maker.
Yep. Yep. And part of deliberate is knowing when to let it be more hare, when to let it be more tortoise, and how can you mix the two. And it's almost like if there's an alchemy, right? And not every decision is the same. And so how do we choose the dial, right? And so that is something we will ultimately get into. The two topics are like, why are we even debating this? Why is this context of lots of more data even a challenge? And that's what we're going to talk about first. So there's two parts. Quick primer on how our brains naturally work to process information, because that is one of the challenges here, is the amount of information we had to process. But then based on that sort of fundamental foundation, a simple to apply approach for helping improve decisions of how to turn that dial, how to get the deliberate mix of tortoise and hare. So is everybody with us? I'm going to go right into an exercise. So this exercise, if you're in a place where you are comfortable coming off mute, this is a group exercise. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to show you a column of numbers. And all together, we're gonna chime in. So I'm going to start by showing you a number on the next slide. I don't want to give it away yet, but I'm going to show you a number. And all together, we're all going to say that number. Then I'm going to hit click and another number is going to show below that. And then all together, we're all going to say the new total. And then it'll keep going. I'll show another number. All together, we're going to say the next total. So as much as if you're comfortable doing this, it's a great group exercise. We'll see how this goes. You ready? Come off
Okay,
mute
so
if you're
I've
comfortable.
allowed people to come off mute. So whoever wants to play, just go ahead and
Yeah.
come off mute.
Okay. Ready? Here we go. We're all going to say together this first number. Ready?
1,000.
1,000. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Now I'm going to show another number. We're all together going to say the new total.
40.
1,040.
1,040. Yeah, put the two together. Perfect. Put it together. 1,040. All right, keep going.
2,040.
2040.
2,040. Beautiful. Keep going.
2,070.
3,000.
Y'all getting it. You're getting, I feel the groove coming.
3,070.
3,070.
Oh, yeah.
3,090.
Even better.
4,090.
4,090.
Beautiful.
5,000.
5,000.
Oh, 41 times? Oh, shoot.
Do not feel bad. I have done this. So I had this really cool role for a while. I was traveling around the world with World Bank, and I had their comptrollers with me. And
Oh, sorry, I muted you. I'm so sorry. I muted you, Nita. Can you come off mute?
sorry. So I was doing this World Bank thing where like the comptrollers and I did this with them, and I lost like 10 minutes of the session because they were like, no, go back. What do you think actually happened? Anybody have any ideas? What happened? Well, how did we get to 5? Because 95% of the time people go to 5,000. Anybody have any ideas? You can write it in the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you to say it out loud. What happened?
Yeah, this
Why
is
does this
crazy because
work?
I could see the exercise. I had seen these slides, but
Yeah.
I still, in my mind, thought 5,000. This is the crazy part. This is why I'm like a better at slow. So fast decision making really trips me up. Anyway, let's see what
Yep.
everybody else is saying.
Brain was racing. We were in a rhythm,
That is
a
the
pattern.
hair syndrome,
Say it again.
the rabbit syndrome.
The rabbit syndrome, the hare syndrome. Yeah, exactly. Our fast brain. We started to process info much faster as the team. Yeah. These are beautiful. The one I want to call out most, Jessica, a pattern. A pattern. Because every other one was 1,000, we got that pattern going. And so when our brain saw the last 10, we just were used to being in the thousands and we went to 5,000. Happens all the time. This is an example of this fundamental concept that I think influences the whole rest of this session. And that is, if any of you have seen this before, a very famous book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. He won the Nobel Prize in economics, even though he is a psychologist, by the way, or a psychiatrist. Well, he's in the field of psychology. He studied how the brain works, how people make decisions for a good 30 or 40 years, and he put that together in this fabulous book. And it's basically, we have fast and slow thinking. We have what he calls system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. System 1 is the fast. That was a demonstration of fast. Versus what Ben said, what Ben was talking about, when he makes decisions, he thinks of himself as very deliberate and very deliberative, where he carefully weighs options and analyzes data. That is the slow thinking. Our brain is in fast mode automatically all the time. And what it's doing, Jessica's comment about pattern, our brains are association making machines. We look for patterns. There is so much information in the world. We could not possibly pay attention to we would be exhausted if we paid attention to every single piece of information. So our brain gets us through that overload by looking for things it recognizes, seeing a pattern, and saying, oh, I know what that is, boom. And it makes an association. It finds a pattern. It simplifies. That's fast. The issue is it's not always perfect. And some of the associations are not, let's just say, accurate. In fact, let's watch this video. Ned, you want to show a video? I'm going to show you one of my favorite videos around thinking fast and slow.
You may not realize it, but your brain actually processes information in two very distinct ways. Like when you look at this photo, you instantly know she has blonde hair, is visibly angry, and likely has some choice words to yell. Without any effort, you experienced fast thinking. But if you look at the following problem, something different happens. Sure, you immediately know it's a multiplication problem, and you knew you could solve it if you had the energy, but didn't. If you do try, your muscles will tense, your pupils will dilate, and your heart rate will increase. Now, you've experienced slow thinking. These two systems of fast and slow thinking dictate much of our perception and reaction in life. Take these lines for example. It's clear that they're different lengths, but if you measure them, they're actually the exact same length. Even now that you know, System 1 or your fast thinking can't stop seeing the illusion because it acts automatically. A similar effect is seen here. Which figure is the largest? Again, they're all the same size, but the suggestion of perspective and depth causes your System 1 to interpret the picture as three-dimensional, even though it's on a flat two-dimensional surface. It's making quick work of the available information, and so your conscious System 2 or slow thinking must compensate after the fact and choose not to believe your intuition or instinct. Want to see your System 2 in action? I'll show you a string of 4 digits, you read them aloud, then add 1 to each of the original digits. If the card reads 3795, the correct response would be 4806. We'll then go to the next card and you'll do the same, followed by the next card. Ready? Go. Few people can cope with more than 4 digits, but even harder is add 3. The interesting bit is that though your pupils would have dilated, you often become effectively blind when you fully engage System 2. Did you notice the color of the text change? Or how about the fact that the numbers completely changed when I put them off to the side? Listen to the following puzzle. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Chances are your System 1 intuition was yelling 10 cents, but this appealing System 1 answer we know is wrong. In fact, the correct answer is 5 cents. Even if you worked out the correct answer, you likely thought of 10 cents along the way. System 1 is trying to work out an answer as quickly and seamlessly as possible, which is extremely beneficial in everyday life. If every activity required full mental effort, it would be exhausting. But knowing this allows us to understand that not all of our first impressions are correct. How many animals of each kind did Moses take into the ark? So few people detect what is wrong with this question that it's been dubbed the Moses illusion. In fact, Moses took no animals, Noah did. Again, our brain invests as little resources as necessary so that things run quickly and smoothly. Because Moses is not abnormal in the biblical context, System 1 unconsciously detects an association between Moses and ark and quickly accepts the question. In a similar way, System 1 generates context without you knowing. Reading each of the following may seem fairly simple. A, B, C, Anne approached the bank, and 12, 13, 14. But your brain actually interpreted these ambiguous statements without you ever knowing. You could have read it as A, 13C, or 12, B, 14, but your brain created the context unconsciously. Also, you likely imagined a woman with money on her mind walking towards a building with tellers. But if the sentence before this was, they were floating gently down the river, the entire scene would have changed because bank is no longer associated with money. Without an explicit context, System 1 quickly generates one based on previous experience. In this case, you've likely visited more banks than rivers, and so the context is resolved accordingly. This ties into a concept called priming. For example, if I said wash, how would you complete this word fragment? Most would see soap, but had I just shown you the word eat, you'd be more likely to see soup. In this way, both eat and wash prime your thoughts. Though System 2 likes to think that it's in charge and knows what's going on, the truth is that priming effects have even been shown to affect and modify behavior. These arise in System 1, and you have no conscious access to them. If you'd like to learn more about the thinking systems in your brain, check out the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, which covers it in great detail. I'll put a link in the description which you can check out. Got a burning question you want answered? Ask it in the comments or on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe for more weekly science videos.
Yeah, so that the ball and bat problem, I had to go back several
I know.
times to understand. It was just crazy.
Yeah.
And this is why this kind of fast decision making, I trip up all the time, thinking, okay, maybe I'm a natural slow decision maker. But really, you're saying most of us get tripped up by fast decision making. So System 1, I guess, is really kind of the hair thing,
That's
right?
the
And
hair.
System 2
Yeah,
is kind of
that's the red.
but System 1 is really what is always kind of working behind the scenes without us really. Is that what we're talking about here?
Beautifully said. Yeah, beautifully said. It's always there, always working, always on. It's our default system. And again, an association making machine that it's trying to simplify everything that's coming at you. And it does it by making associations. And it uses whatever context it has to make that association.
So I guess how can I mean, I'm always really, when I get flustered, especially when there's a lot of decisions to be made. Of course, I don't show my employees that, but as a leader, blah, blah, but you get flustered, right? So
Yep.
how do I figure this thing out?
I am going to show you guys because that comes back to that fundamental question, tortoise hair. And you all said a deliberate mix of the two. What does that look like? What would it look like? And again, think hair is System 1, tortoise is System 2. How do I let System 1 give it the advantage of speed, but inject just enough System 2 to keep from falling prey to what we know are some of the downsides of shortcuts? Because what your brain's doing is shortcutting. And let me show you. I'll give you just a little bit more on what these shortcuts are, just to give you, because then it'll be easier to see why the solution we're going to give you, or the technique, the practical technique that we think will be helpful, is the one we use. And I like this image as well. It's a chair, there's a light over it, and there's just a certain amount of stuff inside the light. The rest is in the dark, right? Our brains make quick use of available information. That's what they said about System 1 versus System 2. It's the information that's in the light. The information that I see is the information that I'm using. Anything just outside that, I'm probably not even seeing. It's one of these concepts we call what you see is all there is. The danger that I don't want to make you think, oh my God, my brain doesn't work. I'll never make another decision in my life, Neta, because you terrified me. Our fast brain is using these shortcuts, and they show up as, people call them heuristics sometimes. Sometimes you hear the word bias, but that one's, I like heuristics and shortcuts better. There's this fabulous thing online. You can find it at that link. This is the Cognitive Bias Codex. It's the 180 plus biases that our brains can fall into when it makes these shortcuts. That's a lot. That's like when we have too much information, when we have not enough meaning, when we need to act fast. These are the tendencies, the shortcut tendencies of our brains, and how they could mess up our decision making. That's a lot.
So here's my problem, right? I mean, I look at
Yeah.
this. I'm never going to read a single thing. I mean, I'm never going to remember this, of course, right?
Yeah.
And so, like,
Yeah.
I've watched videos on YouTube about, okay, so this bias or that bias. You know, I know you don't like the
Yeah.
word bias, so this
Yeah.
this cognitive, this, you know. So I try to remember that, of course, on a day-to-day basis. Okay, which one is it? But of course, I'll never, you know, it's never going to integrate, right? And now you're telling me, I'm like, I was aware of 5 or 6. Now you're telling me there's hundreds or
180.
however many
Yeah.
this is.
So what I've just told you is it's automatic. There's a ton of them. Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Let me get to that in a second. And I'll dig deep into two of them, two of the heuristics, because I think, again, it'll help us understand why I think this one, it's almost like the Lord of the Rings, one ring to bind them all. There is one technique that I think could help you inoculate against most of these shortcuts. But it doesn't mean grinding to a slow halt. You can still get speed and information processing and avoid some of these shortcuts. And that's where we're headed. Let me just do, you've seen this one. These are the two most pernicious out of that list of 180. These are two you probably see the most. Pernicious is a word you don't hear often. I think they're pretty pernicious. Let me give you an example. The confirming evidence trap. Some people call it confirmation bias. Again, I don't like the word bias because it makes it sound like I'm purposefully doing it, and I'm not. My brain's just making a shortcut. So this image captures it to me, right? There's this person already had an idea in their mind of what the answer was, what the decision was going to be, what the problem is, and therefore the decision. And they're out over there hanging on the right. But then there's all this other information that they don't even see. We tend to, when we have a preconceived idea, we tend to seek and rely on information that confirms what we already believe. We don't even realize we're doing it, though. We tend to avoid or overlook information that is inconsistent with our pre-existing view. And it is pernicious. Like, so my husband and I are both professors. We both do this conversation a lot with people. And yet we fell prey to it. His old 1974 Mustang sat in my garage for 6 years, not moving. Why? Because every time he got in the car and drove, it would overheat. Every time. So it's no fun, right? You're out in the car, he got it because it would be a fun, midlife crisis car. You're out, you drive the first 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, who knows when it's going to happen. All of a sudden, whoa, it's overheating. Oh, you have to sit in some parking lot and wait for it to cool down. So brought it to 3 different classic car repairmen. We've changed everything. They changed the radiator. They changed the gear thing. They changed the water pump. Change. Still nothing. So then it sat. So then we finally decided to give it to my brother, who is a classic car guy. But he lives in Florida. How do you get this car down to Florida without him having to drive it? And it's going to blow up on him. And if I kill my brother, well, oh my gosh. So I'm freaking out. We finally figured out a solution. He's going to take it on the auto train. So he's got just 100 miles he has to go between the train and home. I'm nervous. I'm like chewing my fingernails. Like, is he going to get home? Is he going to get home? And I know where he is. I know he's about halfway through, and I get a call, and I'm tense. I'm like, oh no. And he's like, hey, he sounds really relaxed. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, by any chance, did y'all happen to notice that when the heat gauge goes way over to the right, like the car's overheating, that suddenly you have more gas than you used to? What? And he said, I don't think it's an overheating problem. I think it's an electrical problem. The gas gauge is right next to the heating gauge. They are right there in your view. But all of us, including 3 classic car repair guys, where our preconceived notion was overheating. We could be looking at a dash and ignore the gauge right to the left. And we know this. My husband and I know decision-making heuristics. How did we miss it? How did the experts miss it? That's how sort of, again, pernicious these are. Let me give you another one. Framing trap. You've probably seen this as well. The way that a problem is presented to you, framed, it tends to influence how we think about the problem and how we choose solutions. I'm going to give you another example. This is another exercise. I'm going to read it to you because I have to do it exactly right. So I'm going to read this to you. And then I'm going to ask you to put in the chat. I'm going to ask a question at the end. And if you, did they change the thermostat? No. Sorry, I just got the chat. What I'm going to do is read something. And then I'm going to ask you a question. And then you're going to put your answer to the question very carefully in the chat. Okay? All right. Or you can raise your hand, either one. So I have to read this. I want you to solve this problem, but you cannot use pencil and paper. You need to solve it in your head. So pencils down. You are the driver of a bus in a small rural town. There are 6 stops on the route. The bus has just left the bus depot and is starting the route. At the first stop, 6 people get on the bus. At the second stop, 3 more people get on the bus and 4 people get off. At the next stop, the third stop, 2 people get on the bus and 1 person gets off. At the fourth stop, 3 people get on and 6 people get, okay, I probably lost you by now, right? So let me give you the question. Again, don't say it out loud and don't type. Be very careful how you type it into chat. The question I want you to answer is, don't shout it out. Don't say it. Just tell me whether you know the answer or not. The question I want you to answer is, what is the bus driver's name? If you know, just put a little comment that says, I know. Jeff knows. Jeff says he knows. Type something in chat that says, I know. Don't tell me what it is. Kevin knows. That's a pretty good ratio. Lawrence, I'm not sure if that means he knows and he thinks it's funny. That is an example of framing. That is an example of framing. Because the answer, somebody now can type, what's the answer to the question? What is the bus driver's name? Somebody type it in. Jeff. Jeff said, Jeff. Kevin. The first line I said, after I framed the problem for you, the first line I said was, you were the driver of a bus in a small rural town. But I framed it by saying, this is a problem. You can't use pencil and paper. Put your pencil down. What it did was framed your brain that this is a math problem. So the words that came out of my mouth, you were the driver of a bus in a small rural town, most of you rejected it because you had framed this as a math problem. That is an example, again, of framing. It's not that you're dumb. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that you're lazy. It's that this is how our brains work. Like this thing, again, works very, very commonly. So now we're going to get to Ben's point. Now comes the answer. This is my favorite quote out of Kahneman's book. It's in chapter 30, like the next to last chapter. And again, it can make your heart hurt until you get to the second part. He says, I am no better today at stopping system 1, fast thinking, than I was 30 years ago. This is a gentleman who won the Nobel Prize because of his research in this area. I am no better today than I was 30 years ago.
But basically, it's hopeless to try to
I don't want you to
stop
feel
it.
hopeless. I do not want you to feel hopeless, but I do want you to feel like it's complex, but there may be a simple solution, one solution to rule them all. The solution is not about stopping system 1. Just knowing about these things don't make you any better, as evidenced by my husband and his car. It's not about being aware of them. I mean, it's nice to be aware of them, but it's not about just being aware of them. It's about knowing what can you do to just inject while that hair is running as fast as it can. How do I inject just a little bit of slow? Ben, where's your brain on this right now?
I know. So yeah, I mean, look, I would love to have 3 days to make every decision, right?
Yeah.
But, in an 8-hour span, which usually my days are about 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
I make, probably several decisions every hour, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's the problem. And I have looked into, okay, what are the traps? Because I'm always dealing with these kinds of traps. And then of course
Yeah.
later on I'm like, oh man, I should have known not to make, decision A, B, or C. So yeah, so I would love to tap the brakes in some way, but then what do I do?
Yeah. And like, what is it? I love that idea that I can't slow down. Like, Are you
Yeah.
asking me for every single decision that I've got to turn the dial over to the tortoise for a while and go really slowly and deliberately? I don't want you to think that. I want you to think of it as just a tap of the brake. I don't mean grind to a halt. I mean one little thing that you can do that just taps the brake enough to inject just a little bit of that tortoise. And interestingly, it is one approach. There's one pragmatic step that, regardless of which of those many heuristic you're talking about, it could help them. And that's kind of what I want to talk about right now. It's slowing down just a tiny bit, just inject a little. And the interesting thing, I'll say this now and I'll say it again at the end, that what Kahneman said in that chapter 30 about being no better today than he was 30 years ago is you can't be making a decision and then catch yourself and say, oh wait, I might be making a bias, let me do this proactive step, or this step we're going to talk about. He would say it's about a common checklist and process that you make every time you're making a decision. So every decision gets a little injection, but I'll show you how it could be really fast. So the tortoise.
I feel like what you're saying is there's got to be a process, right? And so it's kind of like, I feel like what's going to come is like learning how to drive. At first, you don't know how to do that, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe driving a stick shift. There's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The gears. And but at first you're really slow at it, or you don't know when to do so. But at some point it becomes natural. So hopefully, what we're going to learn here at some point just becomes a natural part of decision making. That's what I'm hoping to hear.
Absolutely. Habitual. It's a habit. It's
Okay.
a habit. It's a little tortoise. And I have done it myself. I stepped into a big leadership role at the school for 4 years, and this is what I think helped me get through, because I stepped into the career services role, helping 5,000 students find jobs in the middle of COVID. Talk about decisions, and it's a group that I've never managed before. I mean, there's all these reasons why, lots coming at you, a lot going on, and it's now a force of habit. By habit, these are the things I do when me or a team are in the middle of making a decision. And again, I'm not saying take 3 times as long to decide. I'm saying just a little tap on the brake. And it's questions. It's questions. Use questions to inject just a little system too. So again, think of that image, right? What is our fast brain doing? Our fast brain is making quick use of available information. It only sees so much information, like a spotlight. So when I say questions, what I'm talking about are questions that help shift the light around. How do I help me or the people that are involved in the decision see beyond what we're currently seeing? How do I change the angle of vision? Really quickly, with a question or two that encourages us to see past, through a different light, what we're seeing right now. That's what I mean. And so you want to do a poll? We're gonna give you 4 questions. Real quickly, answer this poll. Which of these questions do you think would be most effective at doing this? Tapping the brake, injecting a little system too. Just a real quick poll. Curious what you guys think. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. I love seeing the answers, seeing where your brains are on this. A lot of this is probably not new. What else could we do? What are we assuming? Nobody thinks what would my successor do? Huh? Interesting. Interesting.
There are
Okay,
9
yeah.
responses so far. Not everybody's responded.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like, I guess I don't want to think about having a successor. Like, am I that bad at my job? Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I mean, to me, I answered what else could we do, right? And I think
What else could we do?
maybe
So you
that's
like that one?
oh, look, 44%. But I feel like I guess tapping the brakes and looking around, trying to see what else is happening in that dark room, which is a very scary dark room there you're showing us. It was like, who else is back there, right? Or what's back? So putting the light around, I guess that question, what else could we do, sounds like the right question. What else is there? Give
Imagine they're
give
shifting the
us
light.
more
Yeah.
options, right?
Yeah, give us more options. Good, good, good. What are we assuming here? Like in the light, we've made some assumptions. Wait a minute, what are those? Are there assumptions hiding in the corner? Um, uh, we're postmortem. Any of you in military, you know what a postmortem looks like, right?
Yep.
Pre-mortem, postmortem. That's like, we failed. Why? A before action review. Yeah, this is there are a lot of books on decision making. There's a lot of great work being done on decision making. McKinsey's doing a lot of work in it right now. You can find some really great stuff out there if you look at McKinsey decision making research. These folks, the Heath brothers, are really good about taking really good, well-researched, data-driven findings in the area of sort of human behavior, and then writing these really accessible books about it. And so this is a really good book. What they've done is said, basically what I just said about this idea that the best way to tap on your brake and avoid some heuristics and using sort of a Kahneman-like process is, all right, every time you're making a decision, think about the 4 phases of decision making. Basically, I'm facing a choice. I'm trying to, say there's multiple choices here. I'm analyzing those options. I'm deciding which one of those to take, or I'm in the post-decision phase. So if you divide decision making into those 4 stages, the key villain or heuristic or shortcut is listed there next to it. So when you're facing a choice, one of the things that will probably crop up is this idea of narrow framing. So what's the solution? It's a question that helps you widen your options. When I'm analyzing options and I'm gathering all this data and I'm trying to decide, should I be doing A or should I be doing B? Confirmation bias is probably going to be coloring which information you actually pay attention to. And so what's the solution? Reality test your assumptions. When I'm actually, all right, it's time to make the final choice. I may have an emotion could be playing here, creating sort of a heuristic shortcut. How do I attain distance before I decide? And we're after the decision, I'm pretty confident. I'm feeling really good. We're going to be great. I'm imagining what the post-decision feels like and looks like, and I am really confident. That's one of your sort of biases, heuristics here. How do I, before the decision is made, prepare to be wrong? That's where those 4 questions are. The 4 questions we gave you, each one tacks to one of these recommended solutions. Widen your options. What else could we do? Reality test your assumption. What are we assuming here? Attain distance. That's the successor one. If you're emotionally involved and you're trying to make a choice, you might be going with the one that's more comfortable, less risky, whatever. How do you attain distance from the choices so that you're not letting emotion play? And then this great idea that, and I use this all the time with my group. I would say, okay, it's a year, we're a year from now, and all heck is broken loose. This did not go the way we thought it would. Why? So take the idea of questions that you would use every time and align them according to this little model, and you get this thing. I'm going to give you a little more detail. This is not from the Heath brothers. This is our own thing that we worked up at the Smith School, but it's the same RAP model. It's the same Heath brother model. We've just actually given you what some of the questions may be. So again, the 4 phases of decision making: facing a choice, analyzing options, deciding among those alternatives, planning your implementation, the common trap, just as they talked about, and how that common trap is going to be a problem. So narrow framing runs the risk of overlooking options. Your goal is to shift the spotlight so that you widen options. And there we've given you just a set of questions. These, I will tell you, the ones I use every time, especially if I've got a team of people. What else could we do? What if we did both this and that? We were actually getting ready for this exercise, for this webinar, and somebody said, well, should we have chats on or off? Should we use QA or not? And I said, oh, is there an answer that's both? And so that is, again, a normal question that I would use.
We didn't fall into the system 1 decision making.
We did it first, but then we asked that question, and all you can do is pop that question in. Just pop that question in and let the room take it for a minute. What are we missing? What are we assuming? I love in this deciding among alternatives, and I might be emotionally tied to one option over another. What would my successor do? But the other one is, how will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years? And again, you let the room sort of sit with that. And then again, I think by the way, these are my questions. These are questions that I actually ask on a routine basis. And again, it's about routinized, habitual, ask the questions of yourself or the room. It takes curiosity. And that's really what we're trying, like the two things that will really help you and help guide decisions are clarity around what's success, what's the outcome we're looking for, what's the process we're going to use to decide. But then it's curiosity. Curiosity. Ask the question. Let everybody weigh in a little bit. And it will help you shift the light and hopefully see beyond what your fast brain was originally letting you see.
I love
And
the last one. Imagine it's, 12 months from now or 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And like you said, all hell is broken loose. Like, wow, why did that happen? So we're going to the future and then looking back. And that's really interesting. That actually kind of
Yeah.
has me thinking because, in many ways, then it's like, what about what we're about to decide could have resulted in, this catastrophic failure. And so you're actually
Yeah.
judging yourself also from a distance. I mean,
Yes. It is
the
distance
question
too.
number 3 kind of gives you a little bit of a distance as well. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, the number 4 is really huge. Also, of course, like number 1, I'm thinking, okay, like you got to have options, right? You have to look at all the options. But the fact is, in most decisions that we make that are, consequential, we don't necessarily look at all our options if it's not part of our process, right? We don't try to think outside the box. We just kind of all end up in kind of this river, and you just kind of go down that river of decisions, right?
Yeah.
That one follows another without really looking out, unless it's part of your process. So I love
Yes.
that as well, even though it's an obvious one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's an obvious one, but it's not necessarily what we do, right? Um, I like that.
And the reason, the other reason that habitual asking this every time makes this approach even more effective is that if you've got a group, so if I'm got this group, I had 6 direct reports out of an office of 40. And so if I'm sitting with my direct reports and they're coming up with ideas and I say, well, what else could we do? Doesn't that just sound like I don't like their ideas?
Mm,
And so you model this behavior, you model that this is the way we deliberate. Okay,
right.
that's good. That's good. That's good. Anything else? Was there anything? What else could we do? And or looking for the both and when the group is polarized. No, but if we do it, this is going to happen. Yeah, but if we don't do it, this is going to happen. Then you ask the question: is there a both and? What would it look like
So
if it was
like as
both
a
and?
leader, I mean, as a leader, I'm always worried about sounding like I'm questioning my team's brainstorming and support and all that stuff, right? So a lot of times I'll just stay quiet to elicit more from my team, right?
Yeah.
But how can I, like, I guess in this regard, what else can we do? How can it sound more supportive versus judgmental?
Yeah, and by the way, y'all can chat if y'all want to put some. Now we're open to the Q&A open
Yeah.
part here, where we're going to talk about how do you use this in action. Yeah, you could. Actually, I'm going to put that question back at you. Is there a way to ask that same thing to get them to consider to move their spotlight, change their vision, change your angle a little, without making it sound like you're complaining or don't like their
Mm,
current ideas? Because that one with tone could sound like, ugh, those are horrible. What else could we
I
do?
guess tone, right. Because I
So
do say
what
that's really
what's
good. That's great. What else can like
yeah.
let's think further, that type of thing. But
Let's think
yeah,
further. Give me one more idea. What if we have one more idea? What would one more idea look like? And so that you're not negatively responding. Doesn't look like you're negatively responding to one person's thing. And the thing is, once you model this behavior when you're making decisions, then they get it and they know you're not criticizing. So it's got to be done sort of, you've got to have psychological safety in the room, and you've got to kind of repeat this again. You've got to show, and when someone does give an answer, you're like, yeah, that's helpful. Well, and reinforce how the question and the thinking were helpful.
and I agree with
Like,
Jeff in the chat, who says
yeah,
that text that this is another problem that I think we're all dealing with is people having conversations through email, which is like going back and forth, which is
yeah,
like the worst medium, right? and also text through Teams texts, and people getting
Yeah.
upset and so forth. So definitely, that's I guess
It's hard.
I don't want to say I would love to return to the office because I work from home all the time myself, but meeting face to face, having kind of Teams conversations or Zoom or whatever that you use online would be great.
I
Oh,
like
good
some of the
idea,
comments
good
going.
job. I like that.
Yeah, I like the comments about it's a great thought. That's a great thought. Good way to shift the vision here. Yeah, that is outside of what we were thinking. Like recognize the recognize reward, praise the shifting of perspective, because that's what you're trying to get people to do. Let's look one more corner. You're not looking at every single possibility, but just let's look one corner and another corner before we close.
Yeah, delivery is key. I like that.
Can you hear me?
Delivery is key.
Yes, we can hear you.
That?
Yeah. Have you ever watched the show on the History Channel, Forged in Fire?
No.
Okay, so they're making knives. They're doing forging. It's a forging contest. But every time they critique, this is where I picked this technique up. Every time they critique their knives, they talk about what they like. Then they talk about, where they need to improve. But they finish every critique with, "Good job." And just putting that on the end, saying, "Yeah, you did good. We got room to grow. We got room to add to this or do this." But just adding that on the end, it was huge, and I try to do that every time.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I like it. I like that. And here's what's interesting. And again, there's a longer session where we actually go into you as leader. What are you doing in the room? And there's some things you do before the decision making actually starts. There's some things you do while the decision making is happening. You are not the thing that I want to reinforce is that throwing questions in to shift people's light around is your job as a leader, not weighing in. I like that idea. Don't like that idea. Hold off on that for a little while, and instead think I need to be, for at least some portion of this, my job is to help shift their lights a little, shift the light around, and I'm going to ask questions to do it. And the more it can feel like it's coming with curiosity, the less likely I think it is to get sort of negative reactions. There are some other things you need to do too, but that's sort of the general kind of vibe here. And here's one thing I was going to say. The gentleman from the Heath brothers, they actually wrote it specifically as RAP, right? Widen your options, reality test your assumptions, attain distance, prepare to be wrong. And so what I would encourage you to do is find your own questions. Like these are the ones that I use habitually all the time. What are yours? I jokingly like to say, write your own rap song. Like as long as you, and this is why I said that image of the tortoise and the hare is so important, because what I want you to understand is you can't stop that fast thinking. The hare is always going to be there. It's about tap, inject a little of the tortoise. And the point of the tortoise, the slowing just a little, is to shift. What are we missing? Shift the light around, change the angle of vision, so there isn't something outside of that circle of light that we should be attending to. Now, the more important the decision, the more that brake's going to go down a little harder. And if it's a really simple decision, well, you barely even tap the brake at all. But the point is to habitually a set of questions.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm a little bit like I've learned a lot, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Of course, I've seen the slides, but you presenting it now, I'm really kind of integrating it. And like I gotta say, the whole attaining distance is, and then planning implementation, kind of seeing that distance part, the last two parts, that's like really new to me, totally new to me. But even the W and the R, testing one's decisions or widening your own options and so forth, those aren't necessarily being done, at least by me, or being kind of pushed in the organization on a regular basis. So it's really important. I think I'm going to definitely integrate some of that in our meetings and so forth when we make decisions.
Yep. And again, make them your own so they come out in your style, your tone, your approach that fit your room. By the way, the pre-mortem thing, that's a military thing. So the military do pre-mortems like before exercises. Okay, imagine this is a complete failure. Why? What have we done wrong? So
yeah.
I
mean, we definitely meet to discuss when we have classes. We meet every week to discuss those classes every week and we look through and say, okay, what went wrong? But we don't necessarily have a framework for decision making, right? So we review our classes. We of course look at every class ahead of time as well, make sure everything's done. But in terms of like longer decisions or bigger decisions, this is a really
Yeah.
great framework for us. All right,
Yeah,
guys, questions.
I like
We've
Yeah,
got
Q&A.
another 9 minutes. So
Questions,
you guys,
comments.
if you want to put your questions in chat, or if you just want to, raise your hand and
Yeah.
Eden can call on you.
And by the way, Claudia also likes the Forged in Fire. I don't know if y'all saw that in the chat. And it's funny that I never like to put anything in a session that I myself haven't sort of practically tested. So I am both an academic, but I've come in and out of academia, and I've been in practice. I've led a couple of large organizations, largest, and so I use these all the time. And the thing that's cool is that once, especially with that team, I left that role in September. It's time to move on to another leader, but what's really cool is when the lead team themselves started asking these questions. Like modeled it well enough, they saw the benefit of it, that I didn't have to be the one shifting lights around. They were shifting each other's lights too, by basically asking their own versions of these questions, which is really cool. Thank you, Lawrence. It was good to have you in.
Yeah, Law, you've got a question. You can unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Hi, Law.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks. So, I definitely appreciated this session. You didn't mention the military does something similar to this. I'll tell you from my experience, building a cohesive team up front with a team of very diverse groups is definitely the first challenge, to make sure that we're all catching each other's blind spots, and even creating a safe space so that way folks can provide their feedback without being judged, which is extremely important, right? Because you always got those stones left unturned that probably have the greatest idea. And then like my follow-on experience is, after the initial meeting or kickoff meeting, if you want to call it that, you start to get into a groove after a couple sessions, and you start to get to know the people personally a little bit about how they tick, or maybe how they operate. And then we start to go to that system one thing, and we start to operate at a high functioning state, and great things and magic starts to happen at that point. It is very awesome. Cross communication across the table, no judging, and we're able to pull out the best solutions that we never even thought of. So
I love that.
It's pretty awesome.
Love that. And actually, that's what the rest of this 4-hour session is. We actually go into then, if you're in a team and you're trying to make decisions, what are you trying to protect? How do you create the context that allows this to happen? What's the process, the deliberative process that you as a leader are doing? How do you create psychological safety? So those are all the concepts we go. In fact, I think I've put in an appendix here. These guys don't know I did the appendix. These are the overall sort of process things that we give people for how to manage information processing, and a lot more, but a lot more going in here. But if you can, the thing to remember is I'm trying to shift the light. That's the thing. If nothing else, how do I inject a little tortoise? And the point of the tortoise is shift lights a little, like shift the angle of vision.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add too is that, we constantly have to remind folks on the team that, to focus on the initial intent on why we convened or why we met, the initial problem, right? And making sure that we remind folks on where we're going, right? What the strategy is 1, 3, 5 years out, and to think the long game. A lot of folks are trying to come up with immediate solutions and immediate problems, but we got to think long term. So, lastly, I will say is being very self-aware takes some time, but once you start to get to that point, you start to be very inclusive of everyone's ideas.
And so Law, what's funny is these are some of the slides from the rest of the session. I thought this might come up, so I put a couple of them in here. And start with purpose. Like, what's the criteria? What's success look like? What are the criteria we're using to bounce these decisions off of, right? The options off of, and framing that task. This is the psych safety part, where you frame the task as this is a challenging puzzle. We're going to need everybody's input here. Everybody's perspective is going to matter. And then, do we need to talk about what the decision-making process is going to look like? What do we need to do? Is there anything we need to do there? But then real time, and this is what managers and leaders have a hard time with. Even I do. I'll admit, there are times I got to say to myself, shut up, ask a question, don't make a statement. Our jobs are information processors. We, just like you said, how do we make sure that we've created a context where people feel comfortable raising ideas, that they're heard and that they're considered? How do we create that? And that's, again, if you're modeling questions, that it's okay to ask questions. You ask the question in a way that the intent is clear. I'm trying to just shift angles. This will eventually, as you said, I loved how you said it, like a team that is just operating at super high effectiveness, catching each other's.
Yeah. You know,
I appreciate your feedback, Law, because I know Law personally, and he's a leader at the Air Force, so really appreciate that that feedback too. You were going to say more.
If we had 3 hours, we could go into that in even more depth.
Yeah.
Actually, in the real version of the of that session, we actually do a team decision making exercise. So we set everybody up with these concepts. Then we say, go make a decision as a team, like a team they've never worked on before. Make a short time frame, fast decision, and then see they practice whether they can use these questions or not, and did it help their team's processing? So.
Excellent.
This is a very great
fun
conversation. If I could add one more thing, one thing that I've had a challenge with myself, and I'm self-aware of it now, is that early on in my leadership roles, I would always get frustrated when folks at the table didn't quite understand where we're going. And I later on realized, and that's okay, right? You got certain people who have different levels of experience. Some folks, it's probably their first time at this level of a meeting, and they're so very used to working at a very tactical level, at the very edge, versus at the higher level where we're thinking strategy. And being self-aware of that, I think for me was important, because I think that, there's definitely future leaders that are definitely going to replace me. And so it's important to build that bench. That's what I have learned over time. It was a challenge at first. It was very stressful for me.
Well, and again, there's some content we don't cover in this idea of empowered decision making. One of the I love military ideas as well, and the one I really love, and this was the thing I had to work on with this team that I inherited, was commander's intent and left right boundary. Like I can't make the decision myself. I could, but it's disempowering the people who are feet on the ground closer to the problem than I am. And so what I would try to do in those conversations is, okay, here's the intent. Here's the intent. Here are the left and right boundaries, the guardrails we need to be inside. So that part of that framing the task, that's what I would do. And then they encourage them to discuss and throw those curiosity-based questions in to shift light. That's the role I had to learn how to get used to, right? We all feel like we have to make the decision and we are guiding the decision. And I think we lean into that too much. Where we can add the most value is by injecting that little bit of tortoise. Oh, I have to do my last slide. How many of you are not surprised that somebody from the University of Maryland is talking about tortoise? We need more tortoise.
That's pretty good.
Wait, I'll give you my last thing on Testudo. This is my favorite thing on Testudo, because so I'm the only person in my entire family that has a degree. I have 3. I don't know, something wrong with me. My other 2 schools though have fierce mascots. I get to Maryland to get my PhD, and I'm like, a turtle. And then President Lowe, he turned me around. President Lowe, I saw him speak once. It was our previous president of the university. And he said, he won me over to Testudo. He said, who is the only animal in the animal kingdom that can only move forward and not backwards? The turtle. And how does the turtle do it? One step at a time, sticking its neck out. Leadership, baby.
So it is, we're at the end of our webinar, but of course, if people have more questions, we'll stick around. But just for the rest of you, thank you very much. Please stick around if you want to hear everyone's questions. I did want to say that you have our contact information here. If you want to purchase this kind of training through GSA, we are the GSA vendor for the University of Maryland. You can go through us. It's really an amazing partnership. We love working with Maryland. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, we'll
I
stick
thought
around
someone
if you
had.
want. You're welcome to leave, because I know we're up at the time, but if anybody wants to stick around, we'll stick around.
Yeah. If anyone has any more questions, but otherwise, thank you very much, guys. The recording will be sent out to your email. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with us. I certainly had a great time. Thank you, Nita.
So did I.
This
I
was
had a great time.
amazing. I loved it.
I
I
love
learned so
doing this
much.
stuff.
This was
I
really
love doing this
great.
stuff. Thank you, audience. You guys were a terrific audience.
Yeah.
Engaged the whole way. So thank you for doing that. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you all for being engaged in the exercises. This was great. I had a great time. So thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ned, for your support. Nita,
Yes,
you're
thank you,
amazing.
Ned.
Yeah.
Producer
You're
extraordinaire.
welcome, guys. Great
Exactly.
Great
All
job.
right. Well, we can